Thursday in Simpsonville, South Carolina. It's 89 degrees at 7:25 in the evening. So big change from the mountain. A lot of shock to the body. Had to come down for a doctor's appointment, get stitches out, and thankful that everything is still good, and the doctor's still convinced that he got all of the cancer out. So here we are. The apostles, listed in Matthew 10, Mark 3, Luke 6, and Acts 1:13. Guess who's first in every one of the four lists when they list the apostles? If you guess Peter, you're absolutely right. Peter was a real leader. Not without fault, but he certainly was a real leader. And if you could ever get confused by names, you could certainly do it with Simon Peter, because there are a bunch of Simons in the Bible, and many times Peter was called Simon, particularly early in his ministry before Jesus and Matthew changed his name over to Peter. But Simon is used as the brother of Jesus, the leper, the man of Cyrene, father of Judas Iscariot, the sorcerer, the tanner, the Pharisee, and the zealot. But Peter's name is used 170 times in the New Testament. In the four Gospels, between 25 and 31 times each, for a total of 106 references just in the Gospels. 52 times in the book of Acts. Early in the scriptures, very often he was called Simon or Simon Peter, later just Peter. 4 times in 1 Corinthians, 6 times in Galatians, 1 time in 1 Peter, 1 time in 2 Peter. Cephas, C-E-P-H-A-S, was another name that Peter was known by. So you could get really confused if you weren't sure who Simon Peter was. He was born in Bethsaida. He was the son of Jonas. His older brother was Andrew. He was a fisherman. He was a partner with James and John in the fishing business. Likely he was one of the disciples of John the Baptist early in his life. He's a writer of 2 epistles. Well acquainted with the Old Testament, he refers to the Old Testament 46 times in his writing. He was a leader, and you may be surprised, he was married. He was in the inner circle of 3, Peter, James, and John. Peter bridged the distance between the Jew and the Gentile by extending the ministry of Christ to the Gentiles, realizing that that was God's intent. And Cephas means rock, Greek Petros, and he was a rock in so many places. He was called by Jesus, and he saw great miracles, and he even had the opportunity to walk on water, even if it was just a short time before he took his eyes off Jesus. We know too that he was not a real fast runner, because John beat him to the tomb after the resurrection. What were his mistakes? Well, he tried to rebuke Jesus when he had what he wanted instead of what Jesus was bound to do. He struggled with forgiveness. He said, "How many times should I forgive my brother?" He sometimes had pity parties for himself. He's constantly putting his foot in his mouth early in his ministry. He fell asleep in the garden praying with Jesus. Resisted foot washing when Jesus wanted to wash his feet at that supper in the upper room. He was impulsive. He asked Jesus, "Should I fight in the garden?" And before Jesus had a chance to respond, he swung his sword and cut off Malchus's ear. He was a real preacher, a real witness. He did some healing, and he had understanding of the ways of God. He saw the Gentiles as ones that too would receive the grace and mercy of God. Quite a guy, that Peter. Makes the Bible even more believable because we see all of his faults. In spite of all of his faults, God used him mightily. And we may all have lots of faults. That doesn't mean God can't use us mightily. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.